know something that's really scary about that skit? Some of us are in this room and we are married going, that's like the dates we go on still. Right? It can be really hard and uncomfortable and awkward, and what are you supposed to talk about? What are you supposed to focus on? It can sometimes feel like this isn't what we thought it was. And that's what I want to talk about for the next few weeks, this idea of love and sex and dating, because those words can mean very different things depending on who you are and where you come from. And sometimes we can make those untouchable words because they make us uncomfortable and we don't want to talk about them. So for the next few weeks, this is going to be maybe uncomfortable, but I think it's going to be helpful in kind of identifying what is it that we're talking about when we talk about it. It can be sort of like when you play Monopoly. Does anybody in here play Monopoly? I love the game Monopoly. I grew up playing this game like every weekend. My family would clear a table and we would play Monopoly. And I don't know why this game takes 18 hours to play, but it would be kind of an all-weekend affair. But what would be interesting or difficult sometimes is when I'd go to a friend's house and they would want to play Monopoly. Because what's interesting is everybody plays this game a little bit differently, don't they? Everybody kind of has house rules. So, for instance, at my house, anytime you have to pay like the luxury tax or community chest comes up and you've got to pay money, that all goes into the middle of the board. And when you land on free parking, you get all of the money that's in the middle of the board. Well, some people don't play that way. And some people have very different strategies than my family. I mean, I didn't win all of the time, but the way my family operated is we kind of all had our own way of doing it, and it just worked well, and we never got into arguments or fights. But then you go to a friend's house and you realize you don't play Monopoly. I don't know what you're playing, but you're playing something very different than my family does. And it can be confusing, and it can be frustrating, and it can be unsettling, and it can be just like love, sex, and dating. Because in some ways we're all playing this game, but everybody's playing by different rules. And when we're out there in the world and we're dating or we're trying to date or we're married or trying to be married, it can be like, what game are you playing? Because I'm playing something different, and it can be frustrating, and it can be scary and unsettling. So this series is really about anybody that's involved or wants to be involved in a romantic relationship. So you could be young, old, older, or somewhere in between. I think this series has something to say to you. You might be single in the room this morning, and you are dating. I really believe that this series has something to give you in how you go about navigating that whole thing. I think if you're in this room and you are dating again because you may have lost a spouse or been divorced, and you're back in this game that has changed so much in even the years since I've dated, I think there's something here for you. And I think if you're in the room and you're married, or what I want to call still dating, there's something in this for you. And you go, wait a minute, well, I got married. Who said anything about still dating? You see, that's something you didn't know maybe. That the whole game doesn't end. It shouldn't end. There should continue to be the same amount of effort and thinking and planning and work that goes into your marriage that went into your dating. But you see, nobody ever tells you that. So I will. I want to do that for the next few weeks. And I'm going to tell you, this series, The New Rules of Love, Sex, and Dating, is not mine. I am borrowing it from a guy named Andy Stanley, who's a pastor down in Atlanta, Georgia. And here's why. It's good. It's really good. It's not often that I get to come up here and say the sermon you're about to hear is good, because I've written them and I don't always do a good job, but these are so good, and there's a great book by the same title, and I read it and I thought, I have to share this with you because it's profound and it's extremely helpful. And so for the next several weeks, I'm going to share that information with you. And as I've been thinking about it, I came to this realization when I was thinking back through the people that I know that are married, or the people that I've had the privilege of counseling and have been married, and why I think this series is so important. There are no such things as marriage problems. Just people with problems getting married. Make sure you hear me on that. I really believe there are no such things as marriage problems. I think it's just people with problems get married. And those problems collide, and they create friction, and makes it difficult. But the problem is not the institution. The problem is not marriage. The problem is not the game. The problem is the players and their interpretation of it and their strategy and the way that they go about it. You see, we need to stop focusing on marriage as if it were the problem and start focusing on us. You and me. You see, for the next several weeks, I need you to come to church differently. Because a lot of us will sit in these chairs on a Sunday morning and we will hear the sermon and we will nod along and we will think this is great and so needs to hear it. So we're going to go buy them the CD, or we're going to send them the link in an email because this is important for them. The next few weeks need to be, you need to come in here and hear this for you. Whether you're married, single, or somewhere in between. And understand that the problem isn't necessarily what we think. The problem is profoundly us. And here's how we got there. I have a theory as to how we got to this place where we always think the problem is marriage, or the problem is the dating relationship, or the problem is them, and not understanding that it's us. Here's how we got there. We bought into the right person myth. It's pervasive. Everywhere you go, we believe that somewhere out there is the right person, and if we could just find the right person, then everything would be right for us. Because sometimes we're okay admitting that we're missing something, that we're broken in some way, that we need some help, that we can't do this life alone. And we think because Jerry Maguire told us that we need to go find someone else to complete us. And we need to find the right person, right? So we go about looking for the unicorn all the time and think that magically everything for us is going to get better. And we get lost in that search because of a little thing called chemistry. I don't know how we got science involved in some of what we're talking about for the next month, but we did, and we think chemistry is what makes for the right person. And by the way, chemistry is code word for sex. If we have sex with that person and it's not terrible, then we feel like, well, they must be the right person. It works, right? We tried on the shoe, we drove the car. By the way, if you're in the room and you are dating for the fun of it, you're not going to have fun for the next 4 weeks, because I'm going to come at you with this. We oftentimes think that if we get that white-hot passion and that romance going, and we can't see straight when we're with them and all of that kind of stuff, that means they are the right person, because we've spent so much time searching for the right person. And it's like a fog settles down on the top of that relationship, and we're just trying to make our way through it. And when we bump into somebody, we think they're the right person. And here's how it works. It's a scientific thing, since we're talking about science. It's a phenomenon in sociology called focalism. And here's how focalism works. Let's say that this circle represents a person, okay? And this person that you go on a date with, or maybe that you're married to, is made up of all kinds of virtues and characteristics. Some of them are good and some of them are bad. but they're everywhere in this person. And as you get to know them, you discover them, and you interact about them, and you talk about them, and eventually you start to narrow in on one of those positive things. Right? You go, I love that about them. And so I'm starting to think that they, finish this sentence, might be the one, the right person. But here's how focalism works. And I was talking to an officer that's on the SWAT team that was helping me understand this. There's this thing that happens in us when we're in a hostile situation where we tune everything out except the threat. So they train officers to deal with, when they walk into a hostile situation, how to continue to listen to the things happening around them and see things around them. Because oftentimes we'll get tunnel vision, and physiologically we will lose the ability to hear other things that are happening around us or see other things that are happening around us. So in a trial, when someone was part of that situation and they say, well, I heard this going on while the thing was happening, people will go, no, you probably didn't. Because there's this thing that happens in you where you tune that out. And that happens when we think we've found the one. We focus in on that one positive thing that we love about them, and we also start to tune everything else out. And all of a sudden we go, we found them. Look how perfect they are. You've said this or you've heard this. They're perfect for me because they're the person that I've been looking for my whole life. And look at them. They're exactly what I've been looking for. And what happens is we get into a long-term dating relationship, probably a sexual relationship. We maybe even get married. And this is what happens. The fog lifts. And the chemicals that make the chemistry start to go away. And all of a sudden, some of those positives and negatives that we were ignoring before become present or real to us again. And focalism never goes anywhere, because do you know what we do when we're married? We don't focus on that positive thing anymore. Now we start to focus on the negative thing. And the same phenomenon occurs. You know what we say now? They're not the person I married. They changed. They don't treat me how they used to. They don't act how they used to. They're totally different. And the other person's going, no, that was always there. You just weren't paying attention. But you can see the problem here is not the marriage. The problem is people. The problem is us narrowing in on things and forgetting some of the important things. And we allow chemistry or sex to cloud our ability to see a person as a whole person. Because we're so consumed with finding the right person. So combating this is going to take effort. It's going to take purpose. And maybe even some sacrifice. I'll never forget when I was at my sister-in-law's wedding. My wife was the matron of honor. And so at the reception, she had to give a speech. And she stands up in front of all of the people that were there, and there were a lot of people there. And she grabs the mic, and these are the first words out of her mouth, and I quote, "Marriage is work." And I felt like everybody in the room went, zzz. That poor woman must be married to some kind of jerk. I mean, I felt like everybody here right now thinks I'm a horrible person because you got to work so hard to be married to me. And we had it out in the car, and I let her know this. And she said to me, she goes, "You're not hearing me." She said, "I'm not saying that being married to you is work. I'm saying that being married means I have to work. And I have to work on me. You see, God blessed me with a woman that teaches me more about Jesus every day than any book I've ever read. And she understood and taught me in that moment that marriage is work. Because marriage cannot be all about what's wrong with the other person. And your dating life cannot be all about what's right about the other person. Your dating life and your marriage has to become more about you. And I don't mean in the selfish way, I mean in who's going to put in the effort to make the thing work. Who's going to put in the effort to be the one that should get caught? Be the catch. Be the one that should get the best. This is where I want to work from for the next few minutes. You need to be the person you're looking for is looking for. Try saying it 15 times fast. Be the person you're looking for is looking for. Don't worry about them and what makes them them. You worry about you. And who are you becoming? You see, it's the difference between hunting for the right person and becoming the right person. Because here's a little spoiler alert. The person you're looking for, that Prince Charming, that princess that you'll ride off into the sunset with toward the castle, they may not be looking for you. And so we need to get dedicated and committed to becoming the person that the person we're looking for is looking for. So I want to show you where that pops up in Scripture. And here's the interesting thing about Scripture. You can start at the front cover, and you can go all the way to the back cover, and you are not going to find a chapter on how to find the right person to marry. Paul left that chapter out. And Jesus never preached about it. I mean, I wish you could go through this and go, oh, good, Ezekiel 6, subtitle, how to find the right person and have a great marriage for the rest of your life. But for whatever reason, God did not put that in here. But do you know what he did put in there? How you can be the right person. It's full of that. It's everywhere. Where you start to work on you. And if you're sitting in here going, okay, this sounds like a message for people that are dating, I'm married, been married for 40 years, then here's how it sounds for you. Be the person that you married. Be the person that your spouse hoped you would be. Become that person. Because you went into this with an idea. Don't make that idea all about them. Make it about you. So, in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, you recognize that? If you've been to a wedding at any point in your life, they talked about 1 Corinthians 13. You know why? Because in Christian circles, we call that the love chapter. By the way, I think 1 Corinthians is about a lot of things. I think you could use the love chapter as a definition of what kind of leader you should be, what kind of parent you should be, what kind of employee you should be. But it is definitely in some ways and in a lot of ways about romance and the way that we should be when we're in a dating relationship or in a marriage relationship. So I want to sit in that for the morning and work our way through that. And we're going to just take it kind of bit by bit and talk about some of the words that pop up in there because there's a lot of them that we just fly right by. For some of you, you're going to know this really well, and we're going to sit on a word for a minute, and you're going to go, I didn't even realize that was in there. So we're going to go slow. And so here's how it starts. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 in verse 4, love is patient. Stop. Love is patient. Love is patient. Some of you just went, not interested in love anymore. Love is patient. Love does not push the other person if they aren't ready. That's love. Love is when you are willing to go the pace of someone else. I used to think that patience was, I'm just going to decide in this moment that I will be patient. And in a lot of ways, it feels like you're just going to stop. But what patience really is, you just slow down or gear down and go their pace. Here's how it looks in real life. If you came down Dilly's Road from the north to get to church today, I'm going to let you in on the fact that it is a 50-mile-an-hour speed zone. Most of you don't know that because I get behind you coming to church, and we're doing 35 or 40. And here's how most of us look at that, because we're not naturally patient people. We think, what do I do in that situation? Wait till it's a dotted line so I can buzz by you. I'm going to give you the look as I go, and then I will show you what 50 miles an hour looks like. But patience is, you want to go 40? Okay, I'll go 40. I'll get there when I get there. I just got tuned out. Nobody's listening the rest of the way. But love is patient. And this is going to pop up in your dating relationships. It is going to pop up in your marriage. It is going to pop up when you have children. Because children do not have the faculties to go the speed of an adult. They don't know how to get their shoes on in a timely fashion. And you are going to have to learn to go their speed. And for some of you, you are here this morning alone, even though you're married. What love looks like in that marriage is you slow down, you go their pace, because they are figuring out Christianity slowly. They're figuring out Jesus and who he is slowly. Some of you need more patience with your spouse because they're 45 and trying to figure out what they are supposed to do with their life still. And it's taking forever. But patience and loving them means you go their speed. Patience. That's what love is. And then Paul goes on. He says, love is patient. Love is kind. Now, that's a word that sometimes, and unfortunately so, gets confused with weak. And we think that if we're kind, we're mushy and soft. I don't know how that happened, but it's always kind of under the surface when we're telling, especially men, to be kind. I don't want to be weak. Here's what kindness is. It's when you leverage your strengths for the good or benefit of someone else and not expecting anything in return. That's kindness. And some of you men need to learn how to practice kindness. Because here's what we do. We're so sinister. I will be kind to you on our date. I will be kind to you in our marriage. But I'm expecting a reward. And you know what I'm talking about. Fellas, that's not kindness, that's manipulation. And it's selfish. Kindness is, I will act for your good and not expect anything in return. That's love. It's not weak, it's considerate. It's you being considerate of someone else's needs and doing what you can to help them. Now, some of you are sitting here going, okay, I'm not patient and I'm not kind, but good news, I'm going to find somebody that is. And then somehow we're going to end up as a balanced equation. That's missing the point, because you need to be the person you're looking for is looking for. Because again, that patient, that kind person may not be looking for you if that's not you. So Paul continues, love is patient, love is kind, and then he gets into this run of it does nots. First one is it does not envy. Envy is one of these peculiar words, and here's how I look at it. Envy is when you don't feel too good about you, so you make sure they don't feel too good about them. It's a pride thing. It's a self-centered thing. I'm feeling about here today, so at dinner I'm going to make sure they aren't feeling like they're up here, because I don't want anybody to be up above me. This is how we operate. We don't articulate it. We aren't conscious of it always. But oftentimes we think, I can't have anybody feeling better about their life or their day or their situation more than me, so I'm going to knock them down a few notches. That's envy. That's what Paul's talking about, and he says love does not do that. Here's what love does. It lets the glory sit on them for a little while. Love does not one up. Next time you're in a restaurant and you can tell the couple next to you's on their first date, listen for the one up. It's always there. Yeah, so when I was in college, I studied in Europe and, for a couple months. Oh, well, I traveled all around Europe like 3 times in college. What? Why did you need to say that? Because heaven forbid you're sitting with someone that's done more or experienced more than you. Married people, this is how you do this. Your day's not as hard as my day. Your job's not as stressful as mine. Men, if your wife is loving and sacrificial enough to stay at home all day with your children, fair warning, don't go there. But we get into that, right? We try and one up. You have no idea what it's like to be me or to do my job. You don't know what I put up with all day. Trade. See how it works. But that's what we do. We try and one up each other because we don't want their head to be up above our head. And we play this game over dinner or over coffee or when we first walk in the door. And that's not loving. That's not who you want to be dating. So don't be that person. And then he goes on, love, well, it does not boast. And it's not proud. He kind of puts these 3 together, envy, boast, and pride, because I think pride is at the core of all of it. We just don't want anybody threatening our throne, and so we use sarcasm and we use criticism to knock them down a few notches, to make sure that we're a little above them at all times. What you and I need to do, wherever you are, dating again or still dating, you need to own that. You need to own that that is present in you and dethrone it. Again, the next few weeks need to be about you, not about them. They need to be about you taking ownership of the things, the real things that you struggle with. And here's what you need to do. I am prideful. I am envious. I play those games, and I'm not going to let them have power in my life or my relationships anymore. I'm going to go to work on those things. I'm going to stop asking them to work on all the stuff that's wrong with them before I work on my stuff. And I'm going to work on being more humble and more selfless and more about them. I am going to be the person I'm looking for is looking for. I'm going to be the person in my marriage or in my boyfriend-girlfriend relationship that I was hoping I was connected to. Hard work, difficult work, for sure. But then, just in case we weren't nervous enough, Paul continues, and he says, it does not dishonor others. It doesn't dishonor others. Dishonor is this idea that if you're not going to be that person, if you're going to be loving, then you're not going to create regret in that other person by your actions or by your words. So you're going to do the best you can on that date, Or on that couch at night when you're watching TV after a long day at work and you're with your wife or your husband, you're going to make sure they don't regret you came home. You're going to make sure that they don't regret picking up the phone or accepting the invitation to go on that date. You're going to make sure they don't regret that they met you. That's when you are honoring them. And here's what it looks like. You are going to start treating them like your hero, like a celebrity that you're excited to be around. So, truth. I love Jimmy Fallon. I think he's one of the coolest people on the planet. And if you lined every celebrity up in all of the world and you said, Josh, you can pick one of them to have lunch with today, you wouldn't even finish the sentence and I'd say Jimmy Fallon. Because I just know I'm going to laugh the whole time I'm with them. Now, some of you are sitting here going, you're a pastor, dude. You're supposed to say Jesus. I hang out with Jesus every day. So if I can choose a celebrity, I'm going to choose Jimmy Fallon. And you know how I would act if I were hanging out with him all day? How would you act if you were hanging out with your favorite actress or actor or sports person? You'd be like, Mr. Fallon, can I get you anything? How can I help you? How can I make you more comfortable? Let me drive. Let me pay for dinner. What's that? You don't like this? Let's order something else. I am going to treat you like you are the best of the best of the best. And I am just here for you. And I'm going to be excited. And I'm going to be counting down the days until I see you again. So question, is that how you treat your wife? Is that how you treat your husband? Is that how you treat the person you're going on a date with? You want to change your marriage. Try it. Oh man, I love Heidi with all my heart, but if I came home every day, this is going to sound weird, but like that Jimmy Fallon was cooking dinner, I would come in and I'd be so thankful. And I wouldn't have a disparaging word to say about that meal. And I would be like, Jimmy, thanks so much for taking care of my kids, man. You didn't have to do that. It would radically change my marriage. And for some of you that have a date on Friday next week, you might get asked out on a second one if you try what I'm talking about. I'll never forget, somebody caught me. My dad taught me to always open the door for my wife, the car door. And somebody looked at me and asked, you still do that? Yeah, because I'm honoring her. That's loving. It's selfless and it's hard and I don't always feel like it. But that's loving. That's what we're called to do. And then Paul wraps this up in a way with this last thing. Love is not self-seeking. Love, real love, means it's not about you. And you say, but wait a minute, you said we need to work on you. Yeah, the thing you're working on is being less about you. It's not about what you can win or acquire or get out of the deal. It's about what you can give to it. If you're dating so that you can feel better about yourself, you're dating for the wrong reasons. If you got married so you could feel better about yourself, you got married for the wrong reason. But do you know what I love? It's not too late. You can change it. Now that you know the rules according to God, you can play the game differently. And I think you could win at it. But you have to understand this is who God's called me to be as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a girlfriend, or as the person that I'm going steady with, right? Like, remember that? Way back, we used to say we're going steady. I don't know why, what does that mean? Sidebar. But what we have to get at, God calls us to be people, not find people, not hunt down people. Be the right person. Be the person the person you're looking for is looking for. Be the person that you hoped would be part of this marriage that you got into, or the person that you hoped was going to be waiting at the table for you when you showed up on your blind date. Don't leave it up to them. You be that person. You see, we have to kind of grow up. I don't mean to offend you, because I'm one of these people. I'm just very immature about my understanding of love, sex, and dating. And it's fascinating to me that Paul wraps up this whole discussion about the definition of love with this sentence in verse 11. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. You've probably heard that verse before, but you never knew it came at the end of the love chapter. I think what Paul's saying at is a mature understanding of love and who you're supposed to be needs to grow up. Because it's very immature to think that it's all about sex and chemistry and white-hot passion. It's more than that. It's deeper than that. And it's less about you than that. See, what I think Paul is getting at is that happily ever after, as we know it, is a fairy tale. And you came on a very unique Sunday, because it's the one Sunday that I'm going to diss Disney. This idea that all you got to do is meet Prince Charming. All you got to do is meet your princess, and you get to move into the big castle. That's cartoons. That's fairy tales. Those are stories. But we buy into them. We think that it's all about meeting. And that big magic kiss where the pixie dust flies out. But that's a fairy tale. The same story had talking mice and fairy godmothers in it. So we have to grow up and begin to understand what love really is. The rules are not what we thought they are. They're not what the world tells us they are. And I get it. It's hard because the world doesn't celebrate this kind of love. Because there's no sitcom or television show about a great, godly, healthy marriage. Because it's not entertaining, it's boring. But if we're really going to find or have the kind of lasting love that we're all dying to have, we have to play the game differently. We have to be different in it ourselves. So on your way out this morning, we're going to give you a card that looks like this. And we're calling this card the Becoming List. And if you start reading through that, you're going to recognize the words. It's 1 Corinthians 13. And most people look at that and they think of it as a menu more than a mandate. And I'm going to take credit for that because I was a youth pastor for a while. And here's what youth pastors do with the love chapter. They sit all their high school students down and their middle school students down, and they show them 1 Corinthians 13 and say, this needs to be the person you're looking for. Create a job description for them and go find them. What does that sound like to you? The right person myth. We created that problem. And so we have people running all over the place thinking this is some kind of menu that you get to choose from. And a lot of us approach it with, well, I'm not that and I'm not that, so I need to find somebody that is to balance my equation here. I need to find the right person. But this isn't about them. This is about you. This is about you becoming the right person. No more hunting, becoming. And so you're going to get this card on the way out, and here's what I want you to do with it. I want you to put it somewhere that you're going to see several times a day. I don't know what that is for you. For me, definitely the refrigerator. right on the refrigerator. For some of you, it's the mirror. For some of you, it's your briefcase. For some of you, it's the dashboard of your car. For some of you, it's the television. Put it right in the middle of the screen and watch around it. But I want you to dwell on this chapter for the next month. And here's what I want you to do. Memorize it. Seriously, memorize it. It's not often that I'm going to get up here and tell you to memorize something, because I'm terrible at it. I don't memorize things well. But I'm committed for the next month. By the end of this series, I will have this list memorized. And I'm not going to have it memorized so that I can point at everybody else and say, you need to be more of this, you need to be more of that. This is going to be the thing I memorize so I know who I need to be. Will you join me in that challenge? Will you memorize this with me and make it a part of how you think? What you're going to find is you will naturally begin to look for dating relationships. You will begin to infuse it into your marriage without even knowing that you're doing it. And what else is going to happen is that love that doesn't fit on this list, that doesn't fit this description, will repulse you. You won't want to be around it anymore. So if you're in a dating relationship, you might need to be preparing to break up, honestly. Because you're going to go, if I'm going to find this, I need to become this. Because if this is who I want to marry, or this is who I want to date, or this is who I want my spouse to be, then I need to become that person first. Work on me and not point at them. Be the person you're looking for is looking for. And your spouse, if you're married, is looking for someone. Make sure it's you. Become that person. Become the person that when it comes by on the online dating thing, they go, wow, they're different. Let's pray. God, I think maybe my favorite part of 1 Corinthians 13 is that it is a word-for-word description of who you are. Because there's another part of the Bible, God, that we read that says that you are love. God is love. And if that's true, and I believe it is, Father, then this chapter is really all about you. And all you're asking us to do is be like you, which we would all agree we want. But Father, we don't always do a very good job. Because it's so easy for us to focus on the other person. It's so easy for us to point the finger. But help us to be the kind of people that really do get the log out of our own eye before we point out the speck in someone else's. Help us to become the kind of people where 1 Corinthians 13 describes us, so that we can find lasting love. Because we're all hungry for that, God. So Lord, thanks for making sure that your word is full of the ways that we need to change ourselves and be transformed. And Lord, help us to have the courage to live it out. Every day, on every date, at every dinner table, in every conversation. Help us to be these kinds of people. In Jesus' name, amen.